being on TV can be really hard.
Megan Olivi is a sports broadcaster for not one, but two sports, both the NFL and arguably most notably the UFC. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited.
Me too. Thank you for asking me. I'm honored to be here.
Of course, of course. So I wanted to start things off talking about kind of, the world we're living in, a movement that's going on now more than ever. We're seeing athletes, journalists, sports lovers alike talk about everything that's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think you put it into such eloquent words when you posted on Instagram what you said. Let's be the generation that teaches children that racism has no place in our world. Be an ally, support those who are marginalized, listen and truly hear the struggles of those around us. I thought that was beautiful. Can you elaborate on what you said a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I work in a company with UFC that is so diverse. I mean, we have fighters from 6 continents, all different backgrounds, all different, race, religion, political beliefs, and you just see everybody as somebody you work with. But I know that's not how the world necessarily is for everybody in every work environment. If we truly care about individuals and just our world in general, we need to listen, and we need to just be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and really just teach. I mean, if you look at how much the world has changed in 50 years, imagine how much better it can be in another 50. So for me, it's like, let's take everything good we're doing and amplify it and make sure we're listening to struggles, understand how we can make them better. And just as we look back, 50, 60 years ago, and we're like, how did you guys think this was okay? I hope that in 50 or 60 years, hopefully much, much sooner, we can look back at the world and be like, look what a positive change we made. It took some bad things to wake a lot of people up and to open a lot of ears, but unfortunately that is what got us there. But now let's use that for the positive for everybody in this world. Okay,
so let's start talking about you. As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
It's funny. I always loved sports. Like, sports were definitely my first love. But I never actually thought I would do something in sports. I think I wanted to be like an artist when I was really little. And then I know I wanted to be like a panda doctor because I loved pandas. And I was like, oh, I can take care of them. But then as I became an adult, I kind of went back and forth between working like as a campaign manager. That was something I thought about. And then I also wanted to be a lawyer. So I kind of was like on a pre-law track in college, political science, and thought, I would go to law school. I actually was accepted into a couple of law schools. And so I thought like maybe that would be my path, but I found broadcasting and sports, towards the end of my junior year in college, and really started to think about it at that time and thought, okay, this is something I can do. This is something I really like. And it's one of those things where you hear people talk about it a lot. It's like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, I mean, it's still really hard work, but this is what I do now is like what I would be doing at home with my friends or my husband, just talking about sports. So if I can do that for a living and be a part of these massive events that I'd be watching anyway, why not? So it's obviously not something you snap your fingers and fall into. It took, a decade of really hard work, but there is something wonderful to be said about loving what you do and being a part of something special every day instead of, kind of schlepping the 9-to-5 job that you hate and complain about all the time. That's not good for your soul, your mental or emotional health either.
Definitely. Was there a moment where you kind of were like, okay, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I always I love the New York Yankees. That was my first love. Like I was the girl that had Yankees bedroom, like just loved them. So I worked in New York City. I went to college at Seton Hall. And I was always talking to the guys I worked with about the Yankees or the Giants. And they'd always be like, Megan, just go like do that for a living. I'm like, no, those girls love themselves. Like they don't have a brain in their head. Like I really had like a very bad image of what a female sportscaster was like. And then I got an opportunity to just do this little tiny web show where we they were like, okay, we're going to put Megan on and it's just all about sports for 1 hour. So nobody's watching. So if you suck, it's fine, but try. And the hour flew by. And then at the end of it, I was like, why don't I try this? Like, I can try and fail, but at least I tried. And so that was kind of when I turned the corner, and I then applied to, like, I took my GREs and then applied to graduate schools so that I could also have a degree to back up what I was doing, because sports broadcasting is a field that a lot of people want to get into. So while I had like hands-on experience, in internships, I didn't have necessarily the background in my education for it. So I wanted to make sure that I had that degree to back it up, and that I also had a graduate degree that did put me a little bit ahead of maybe people who are just doing undergraduate, because I didn't go to a school like to have this amazing communications program or anything like that. I went to school for a lot of different reasons for what I thought my major was going to be. So I just wanted to make sure that I was as educated as possible, because I knew that it was going to take every little detail to stand out amongst the crowd.
Right. And so how did you stand out once you graduated and got your first few positions?
Yeah. So as soon as I graduated college, I then went to grad school at Fordham University, which is in New York City. And I worked, I interned, and I went to school for 9 months straight. And so Fordham traditionally doesn't allow you to take the amount of courses that I took for those 2 semesters. But New York City is expensive. Tuition is a lot of money. All the different fees per semester are a lot. And so I was like, I need to do this as quickly as possible. So I got special permission from the dean to take extra classes. My internship also counted. And so I was able to finish grad school early with honors and put that on my resume, that graduate school only took me 9 months, and it was still, a huge program at Fordham University. And then I didn't think I was above anything. Like, I was starting out, and a lot of, I think, early on positions are in the digital space. And I think sometimes that's frowned upon, or that's looked at as not as sexy as broadcast television. And for me, I was like, I just need to get better. So I kind of did everything. One of my first gigs was I was a sidelines reporter for lacrosse games. First of all, I knew nothing about lacrosse, so it was a lot of work on that end. It was a lower level broadcast and production and stuff, but it was a live sport. I was interviewing coaches at halftime. It was something I needed to do. And I knew I probably wasn't even ready for that opportunity. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to shrug it off because it wasn't this huge platform, which I feel like I just learned that reps were important. Critiquing myself was important, getting other people's feedback and opinions, and really figuring out what's valid and what's not valid. It's a never ending process. Every time I work, I go back and I watch myself and I make notes, and I'm like, what is happening? Sometimes I'm like, how do I have a job? So I think it's just not thinking you're above anything really, and doing the work and working hard and doing the smart work. You know what I mean? Not everything is right for you. There's certainly been jobs that I've been like, oh, okay, this isn't a fit. I'll do the best I can for the time being, but I know this isn't where I will thrive or be a successful human being, not just broadcaster, but also the whole person. So I think it's just kind of finding a lot of those things, and it's through experience, really.
Right. And so knowing all of that, how did you get your position with the UFC?
Yeah, so I was in New York City, and my brother is an incredibly talented wrestler who wrestled for a lot of very high-level teams, and he's 10 years older than me. So I was always at wrestling practice on a wrestling mat, and my grandfather was a Navy champion boxer, and his brother, my great uncle, was a professional boxer. So I had a lot of combat sports experience in my life without even really trying. And so somebody needed some help on a mixed martial arts show, and I started kind of helping out with that because, again, I was just ready to do anything. And I really loved it. And so as I started helping a little bit more, I got a job offer for a digital company to move to Las Vegas and do it. And I thought, I didn't know anybody in Vegas. I had been there a few times with my parents growing up, but it was a new experience. And I thought, well, I'm super poor in New York City. It's challenging to make ends meet. And the job in Vegas was more money, not a lot, but more money and a way less cost of living. So I was like, you know what, let me just try. So, you know, it was really hard for my friends and family, and especially my parents, to kind of accept. But I said, I'm going to give myself a year and give myself the opportunity. And if it works out, amazing. And if it doesn't, I'll come back and I'll be poor and it'll be fine. Like, you know, I'll still try and figure out how to make ends meet. But I came out here, and that was like 10 years ago, and I've never left. You know, I won't say that even to this day, it's not challenging. You know, I miss my parents just came to visit. I'm like sad when I send them back on an airplane, but you know, it has been the best thing for my career.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm talking to these amazing women, I often hear that there's like one, you know, thing where they go out and really take a chance on themselves. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing that catapults them kind of into their destiny.
For sure, yeah.
What advice or what would you say to your younger self who was feeling apprehensive about making that big choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's always just like trust your gut about your own abilities. Like I always felt like I could do it. I was always really nervous working, but I never was like, I could hide it. And then I always prepared. Like I knew that if I was going to do anything, I was always going to be like super prepared and as educated as possible on whatever it was that I was doing. So I think it would just be like, do your homework and you'll be fine, because that's really half the battle, right? Is having the information and the knowledge of whatever your subject is. And so I would probably just say like, relax and do your homework. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Speaking of doing your homework, I've watched, you know, countless interviews that you've done with huge names, Conor McGregor, Dana White. I mean, the list goes like on and on and on. Who is your favorite person to interview or anything of that sort?
Well, I mean, probably currently it'd be hard to say like Conor McGregor isn't my favorite or one of my favorites to interview. There is something special when he fights. And I have worked with Conor for so many years now, you know, back when he was not the main event and, you know, I was not the lead reporter. And so we've kind of, I don't want to say grown up together in the sport because his success is monumental. But we've both really worked as hard as we could at our game. And he is so respectful of our time, and just like, he probably has been asked, no matter what I ask him, that question before, and he will always treat it like it's the first time, which, you know, as you do these interviews, there are sometimes questions you have to ask and you feel bad. You're like, oh, I know you've been asked this a million times, but I kind of have to ask it again. And there are people in the media like Ronda Rousey, she's great at it. Dana White's great at it, is even if they've been asked it a bunch of times, they'll still give you the respect to give their best answer. So Conor for sure is a really special guy. Ronda Rousey, pretty much, I actually told her this, like she changed the course of my career because she always allowed me time to interview her and always gave really great answers. And because of that, I started getting noticed because people wanted to see Ronda content, and they're like, oh, who's this girl that's asking her questions? So she was really special. Brock Lesnar was an amazing interview. He's always really fun to be around. And then, of course, the most special to my heart is when I get to interview my husband after he wins. That's always really, really special.
I was hoping we would end up talking about him because I love your love story. Do you mind sharing it?
Yeah, no, we met in the Mandalay Bay lobby in 2009. I was with a couple of my friends. He was with a couple of his friends. And they like invited us to, maybe Tryst or something, a nightclub. And at the end of the, you know, we got along really well. And at the end of the night, he was like, can I have your email? And I was like, sure. And I gave him my email address, and then we emailed, and we started texting and then phone calls and stuff. And I lived in New York City and he lived in Sacramento. And so we would talk on the phone and just really developed like a really great friendship and communication. And I knew I really cared about him, but, you know, I didn't know how he felt about me. And then I moved to Vegas and things, you know, logistically became a lot easier. So we decided yeah, let's give it a try. And it all worked out. So on our wedding day, I printed out those very first emails we sent to each other back in 2009 and kind of left them for him to read before we got married. Yeah. Yeah. It was, we were trying so hard to impress each other. It was amazing.
Love that. So you guys, I mean, what is it like being in your house when, I mean, all of these things are going, you guys are in the same sport essentially. Yeah. So what is that like? Dude,
honestly, it's so boring. It's so funny. Like, if people knew how boring we were, they'd be like, what is wrong with you guys? Joe trains. He pretty much never is in training, whether he has a fight or not. So he'll do 2 or 3 or even 4 sessions in a day sometimes. And then, I'm always either watching fights or doing research, writing notes. And so a lot of the day we're actually not together because he has such a busy schedule. And like this week I work the event. So I'll be gone a lot of the days doing different sorts of prep and then broadcasts. But we are each other's biggest fans. Like, I couldn't ask for a more supportive partner ever. I mean, everything I do, like every single day he tells me he's proud of me and that I'm doing a great job and that he loves me. And it's so comforting to hear because being on TV can be really hard. People are extremely open with their criticisms, I'll say. So you have really good days and you have really bad days. And the same with his sport, I mean, being a public figure or an athlete in this day and age, like every single thing is under a microscope, from your fighting abilities to what you're doing on the off time to, anything. And so we just have a really great support system. And for me, I understand what he's going through because I'm always around fighters. He understands what I'm going through because he does so much media. And, it helps me with my job because I feel like I can really understand each fighter that comes to do an interview with me, whether it's before the fight, after the fight, win or lose. I feel like I have a great sense of almost taking care of them, putting them in a position to have their own platform where it's not about me, it's about them and what they want to say in whatever way they want to say it. So I really just, my sort of motto at life is treat every athlete I come across as if they're Joseph, because I want everyone to know him as an incredible athlete, yes, but as a full human being, and that he has a wide scope of things that make him incredible. And I want all of our fighters and even when I work in NFL sidelines, like I want to get, even if I get 2 questions, like I'm trying to figure out how I can phrase them in a way to give them the best platform to express how they felt about their performance and their team and their fans and their family and what they're going to do next week and in 120 seconds. So, it's really helped me. And then, there'll be days where I'm like, all right, Joe, remember the person asking you all these questions, they have to. So like, you got this, and so it kind of gives him a sense of respect as well for those in my role too.
Right. You mentioned about how open people are with their opinions online, and that's something in this day and age we have to deal with, just all the time. So how do you handle those comments that are mean?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to give them a lot of power in my life. I'm a pretty positive person. I wake up every day really happy. Even when I'm struggling, I'm somebody who's like upset for like an hour and then I find a calm and kind of like let it go through me. I don't know why I'm like that, but I just am. But man, there are times like I haven't really talked about this before, but like somebody was paying a service to like troll me online. And so I was getting like hundreds of the same message on Instagram, like, or similar messaging every day for a little while. And we found out it was like a service somebody was paying to do to me. And so, that kind of stuff is like, it's just weird that somebody doesn't like you that much that they would do that. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it can really be a struggle. For me, I don't really care what people think of like my appearance. I mean, I care, right? That's part of being on TV, but I'm not like, I don't need to be seen as like everybody look at her. I only really care when it comes to my work. So there's like all these weird tweets like, oh, she had plastic surgery, she had this and that. I'm like, I really have not. I'm just sitting here. But I kind of let them have their opinions and their thoughts, and that's fine. But if somebody's criticizing my work, which thankfully doesn't actually happen that often, that's where it can kind of get me. And I just have to remember, like, the more you do in front of the camera and the more successful you are, the more people are going to want to bring you down. So it's something that I've had to remind myself a lot. It's something I've even had to remind Joe about, and he reminds me. It's like, we're in a position where people think that you almost, like, your feelings don't matter. And so they'll just claw you down at any opportunity. So I just really try to, like, allow myself to be upset, but then kind of give myself a limit. Like, okay, all right, you've been upset about it now. Like, how do you make it better? Or how, just put it out of your mind, because do they deserve that place in my mindset? No, they don't deserve any of that in my life. And so it's just kind of like figuring out with your self-talk to realize, okay, like, if I tell myself I'm only giving them more power, that, like, really helps me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, these people, I mean, what they're doing to you, the awful things, it's really just a reflection of their own, like, what they're insecure about inside themselves. So It's not even worth it. But I know you probably get a lot of hate, but there's also a lot of love. And there's people who don't tweet that really, like, I remember, and I wanted to ask you about this a little bit later. I guess we can talk about it now. But you were a part of, when sports came back, that was like a huge deal. Like, me, my brother, my dad, like, we were sitting, watching, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's awesome. So those people, like, we are out here. We are so appreciative of everything that you do and all the hard work that you put in.
Thank you.
Yeah, so about that, when sports came back, UFC was kind of the sport to do it. What was it like? 'Cause that's an historic event.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, like, it was a little nerve-wracking in the beginning, just because we didn't know just what the world was like. You know, you're kind of in quarantine for 3 months, and you're like, what the heck is happening? But as soon as we kind of started the process, it felt way better. We did so many things to ensure the safety of our entire crew, because people see, you know, the 24 or so athletes that compete. They see a couple of us broadcasters on air, but they don't realize there's so many people behind the scenes that are making things happen. And everybody's safety is equal and paramount, you know, to the success of the production. And so we really implemented some great things. We took every precaution, and everybody, like, nobody complained. You know, there was a lot of weird things happening, a lot of different things and procedures, and it took more time to do this or that, and a lot of things we couldn't do that we're used to doing. And it was just kind of like, okay, you know, I wish we could do it like normal, but life isn't normal, and we're blessed to be here. We're blessed to be healthy. So let's just make the best of it. And so it honestly felt really, really special to be a part of. I think a lot of people didn't think we could do it. I think a lot of people learned who the UFC was for the first time. And it was amazing to, like, show the world our product. And our product looked so beautiful and was so great, even in a world where we couldn't do it as we normally did. So it was really, for me, something in my career that I will forever be proud that I got to be a part of.
Definitely. I think a lot of people, like you said, the eyes were kind of open to what the UFC is, that weren't, like, necessarily fight fans before. Like, now I consider myself a fan, and I would have never said that like a few months ago. So that's crazy. But what is it like on fight night for you? Like, can you give a full day's rundown?
Yeah. So, you know, right now our shows are a little different, but, like, our shows in Florida and our shows on Fight Island will be pretty similar. So it's a much longer day than people realize. We get to the arena a few hours before the show starts, and I will do rehearsals for those different walkouts you see, or where I'm in different positions around the arena. So we rehearse those to make sure the truck has my timing, I have, you know, the camera guy's timing, and we're just kind of all in sync there. So we'll do rehearsals. Everybody will eat a meal together. We'll get changed, and then it's a really long night. I mean, it's like 6 or 7 hours of live fights. And so throughout the night, I will be simultaneously doing live hits. So whether they were our reports, whether they are you know, little tidbits on fighters' walkouts, and then also I'm doing all the post-fight interviews as well. So it can be a lot. It's a very big balancing act. I have to make sure that I'm watching fights, preparing for live hits, and I'm taking notes and doing interviews and trying to, like, fit it all in where everything gets the equal attention it deserves. So it's really a tango throughout the night of figuring out, like, how how to do everything and make sure you're prepared, but also respectful of what the action that's happening in front of you. So it's a really, really hectic, busy night. And then I'm usually there like an hour or two after the main event doing interviews with the winner and loser, doing an interview with Dana. And those take time. Our fighters go to medicals. You know, there's a lot that goes on before they come my direction. So it's a really long day, but at the end of every fight, it's just like I don't want to say a relief. It's just like a great feeling, like, okay, we did it again and it turned out great, you know? So, but it's exhausting. It definitely is really tiring. And then, you know, depending on what it is, we either have off Sunday or, you know, we kind of jump right back into it Monday morning for the next fight week, whatever it may be.
That does sound like a very long day. I'm like tired for you. You mentioned Fight Island. Everyone is excited about that, kind of curious. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's Yas Island, which is in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. It's going to be interesting. You know, I know that they are having like different training facilities for our fighters. I mean, they have a beach and there's, you know, all this that goes on. It's going to be really unique, I think, for all of us. I can't wait to kind of see whatever, I know they've built infrastructure and I'm really looking forward to seeing, you know, kind of what that looks like. And they do everything so grand over there that it'll be really neat to see, you know, what they came up with. And, you know, obviously COVID is still very, very real and very much out there. So it's still like a lot of protection for our fighters, which is great. So while we're doing this and it's you know, Fight Island has become something everyone's talking about, we're also doing it in a really responsible manner. So I'm really looking forward to seeing just kind of like once we get there, what the whole layout is.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, it's kind of hard to think of a post-COVID like world, but do you think things like this will happen again? So maybe one day it could be like a music festival and everyone goes and you'll be able to see these fights live and all of its glory and excitement.
I hope so, man. Like, I so hope so. Every time I'm like, oh, it's getting better. And then you're like, oh, no, it's not, you know? So I really hope so, because that would be so amazing for everyone.
Is there anyone in particular you're looking forward to seeing fight?
Well, Joseph fights on July 18th, so definitely him. You know, our pay-per-view card has 3 title fights, but it also has this rematch between Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade, and that is a fight I'm really looking forward to. They are 2 of the sweetest women in the world. They are 2 of the most badass fighters, male or female, on our entire roster. And their first fight, you know, Rose was kind of dominating, and then Jessica, her nickname is Pile Driver, and she knocked Rose out with essentially a pile driver. And so I'm interested to see what this rematch looks like. And I just love, you know, high-level women's fights. I think, you know, there are still a part of our population, unfortunately, that isn't quite sure of, you know, women in the octagon. And I think fights like that really get them to embrace it and see like, oh, wow, they're incredible athletes.
Yeah, I think that, how do I phrase this? I applaud the UFC for what they're doing for women for a lot of reasons. But like you said, it's as simple as these are damn good fights that any sports fan would be excited to watch. And it's unfortunate that people are still kind of like, you know, not, you know, in agreement with that. But these are fighters who have amazing stories, just like their male counterparts.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we have always been on the forefront of that, you know, treating all of our fighters equal too. And, you know, it's really special to be a part of a company that does that.
Yeah, definitely. And what about your legacy? What's the legacy that you want to have?
Oh my gosh. That's a question I've never been asked. I mean, I guess I just like think it like, I'm like, I don't have a legacy. Like this is a strong word for somebody who, you know, I just consider myself like a regular person and, you know, like anybody else. But for me, I always want to be seen as somebody who had self-respect and morals and respect for everybody around them. I have worked for everything that I've had. I will continue to do so. I never take a shortcut, even though, you know, other people in the industry that might be how they get to opportunities. For me, I always want to be able to lay my head down on my pillow at night and never have a regret about how I got anywhere in my life. And so to me, having like a great moral compass, but also treating everyone really well, though that's what I would want my legacy to be. I am so grateful for every single person I work with. I love my crew. I make it a point to know about them and their families and just everything I can, because without them, I can't do my job. And so I just want like to be considered somebody who always did what was right and always treated people right as well.
That's very noble, very noble. I think that is, that's all the questions I really have for now. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to give you some kudos right now. First of all, you're really good. So great job. And second of all, like the fact that you have the bravery to make your own platform and say like, all right, I'm going to do this. That is something people would never take that leap. And you've done it, and you've done it so, so well. I hope you are so proud of yourself, and I see great things in your future because you're killing it.
Oh, thank you. You make me cry. Thank you.